if things keep going the way they are right now, I think this may be the strangest senatorial race of the past 20 years. But before we get into all of that stuff, I think it's important to first figure out what senators even are anyway and why it's important to even consider and think about who to vote for the senator race. Because I think before we can even talk about this, we need to first have a base understanding of why this is important. Senators, I think, should be seen as equal to the presidents in terms of when you're thinking of who to vote for. Because the senators are literally the people who draft and write laws that affect not just this administration, but future administrations as well. So you can maybe find some way to argue that they are, if not, they're if not more important than the president, they're equally important because, again, what they do will affect the country in a very long-term sense as well. And they affect everyone because, again, these are the lawmakers of the country. The senators are part of what they call the legislative body of the country, meaning the people who make laws are the senators and the congressmen. The congressmen are part of the House of Representatives, and the senators are part of the Senate. They have equal powers, but then the Senate only has 24 people, while the the House of Representatives has around 300 people. And when we go to election cycle in a couple of months, we're going to have to vote for a president, vice president, senators, and also for party list, which the party list is going to make up parts of the House of Representatives. Now, I'm not going to go into party lists right now, but I want to in the future. We're going to focus on the senators and the senator race. Like, why should I care? Again, I think one of the things I was wondering about when I was thinking about, why do we even have 24 senators? Like, what's the rationale behind it? I didn't really know, so I did some research early today, and I found out that there is no real good reason for it, which is a weird thing to realize. The reason why we have 24 senators is because when the Congress was first established in the 1910s under American occupation, they wanted to pattern it after American, political life. In the US, there are 100 senators, 2 for each state. So in a very similar way, when they first established the Congress here, they wanted 2 senators from each state of sorts, or each district, or each region of the country. And back then there were 12 that were, the country was split into 12 regions, or 12 districts. So 2 senators per district, 2 times 12 is 24. In 1940, in the transition between the Commonwealth government to the government of Manuel Quezon, they decided to change this idea that the Senate should be representative of the geography of the country, and instead remove that thing and said, how about everyone in the country votes for all the senators instead of you only voting for the senators that would represent your district. So back then, maybe if it was the case where you have maybe a couple of different senators, maybe 3, 4, 5 that you're choosing between to represent you, now you're going to have 50, 60, 70 people and you have to choose 12. That's what they decided on. I don't know why, but that's what's been happening over the past 80 years, excluding the Marcos era. Now, why keep the number 24 if it has nothing to do with districts, right? We could have any number of senators. Why 24? It doesn't seem like there's a good reason for this. It just seems like they actually just saw that, well, we already had 24 before from the 12 districts thing, so let's just keep the number 24 and then, just make it a national election. There are obviously many reasons that this is a big problem to have the national population vote on 12 people out of a list of 50 that they probably won't have the ability to know individually. But I'm not going to get too deep into that right now, but it's definitely a problem I see, and I hope you see it as well. Because of the way the system is set up, the most important thing is now name recognition. As long as your name is remembered by the people, if you're looking at the list of 50 names, 60 names, likelihood is higher if you're remembered. And so how senators are remembered in order to, be remembered in the eyes of the voters. This is the entirety of what the campaign process, the campaign season attempts to do. It's to get their name in your memory and make you want to vote for them when the time comes for you to check off names in a box. There are many problems. One of the problems, again, of the disruption of this more representative system in the Senate is that most of the people who end up becoming senator are mostly from Metro Manila, if not just from Luzon in general. And so the Visayas and Mindanao don't really have that much representation within the Senate, although they have a lot of people in those parts of the country, in general. They get representation in the Congress, but in the powerful 24, they usually don't get that much over there. When we look at the Senate race, when you think of if you're a senator, right, and if you want to become a senator, and you think, how do I get my name in front of other people? What should I do? How it's been set up over the past 20 years or so is that they start what they call political coalitions. Different parties, depending on what party you're in, different parties decide to pool their resources together with other parties to form coalitions so that everyone can help support everyone within that group. Over the past 20 years, how it normally is that there is an administration coalition and there's an opposition coalition. Usually there are only two coalitions that are main, and there are a bunch of smaller coalitions, but they are not really a big factor in the race for the most part. And apart from the two main coalitions, sometimes there are independent candidates who don't need the coalition system to get name recognition because they're already like celebrities or something. Maybe they're broadcasters on TV or something. So they're actors. So if you don't already have the brand name recognition, usually it benefits you to join one of these main coalitions. Again, each political coalition is a combination of the powers of different parties that, for this given cycle, decide to be either pro-administration or anti-administration. Each coalition only lasts for that cycle, for that election cycle. So for that, I guess for those several months, they join together, put all their resources together, and they campaign together. But after that cycle ends, that does not necessarily mean that they'll stay together as like friends or whatever, or allies. Often it really just lasts for that one cycle. So that's how the senatorial coalitions work. Normally, again, there are only two: opposition and administration. The only time this has been different over the past several years was in 2010, because in 2010, the outgoing president was Gloria Macapagal-Arroyo, who was one of the most, if not the most, disliked Philippine president in the history of the country. And so it wasn't really that popular to be administration at the time, but they did have a small senatorial slate under Lakas Kampe. They got some people into the Senate, but it wasn't like a big senatorial slate. So in 2010, there was Lakas Kampe, there was Liberal Party, Nacionalista, and PMP, all having pretty robust slates with big name people, but they each got members into the Senate for that cycle for 2010. It was a bit spread out. And again, 2010 is the year that Noynoy Aquino became president. And so, during that year, there were more of these coalitions because there was not that much support for the administration. We may be seeing a similar thing right now, and I'll get into it later on as well. But what makes this cycle different and strange for me, that as I've been looking at it more closely, is that, right now we have three senatorial slates that are pretty fully packed. That is the Ping Lacsons, Leni Robredos, and Manny Pacquiao's. We also have the PDP Laban slate. So normally, again, there's an administration slate and an opposition slate. This year, the administration slate is filled with people who don't have much political expertise. Usually, the people who are a big part of these slates, usually all the major political families, the political scions, the political elites, split evenly between administration and anti-administration. Right now, the people who are in PDP Laban slate are all people who are part of the administration, but they're not big names. And all the big names, as of right now, are in the opposition camps, each of which are trying to call themselves the opposition. That's Robredo, Lacson, and Pacquiao. And they have 5 candidates in common. I've never seen this happen before. Usually, you're either administration or anti-administration. Maybe you can be you can maybe a guest candidate on a smaller coalition. Maybe you're a guest candidate of Makabayan or a guest candidate of Una, which doesn't have its own candidates, but they pool their support to supporting certain people. For this year, there are 5 candidates who are part of 3 coalitions, and 2 candidates who are part of 2 so far. And then you have other people who are big factors like Isko Moreno, Bongbong Marcos, who don't even really have coalitions. Isko Moreno seems like he's trying to build a coalition, but it doesn't really seem like it's working out. People are dropping in and out, and Bongbong Marcos just flat out doesn't have one. He doesn't even have a vice president, I mean. So this is a very strange scenario this year where you have a bunch of political elites, people who have been part of the system for a very long time, just having their name in every ballot, in every coalition, on every ticket. And then you have a bunch of people who are part of the administration who are not really that well known. And then you have 2 other major candidates who just don't have senatorial slates. So yeah, I don't know. It's a weird thing that's going on. I want to look into the 7 people who are currently in more than one slate. So the names I'm going to read out are in more than one slate. Lauren Legarda, Cheese Escudero, Juan Miguel Zabiri, Jojo Morbinay, Dick Gordon, Joel Villanueva, and Rafi Tulfo. Rafi Tulfo and Lauren Legarda are on 2 slates. They're in Lacson and Pacquiao. and then the other 5 are in all 3 states with Robredo. Just like quick rundown of what their previous political alliances were, just to have a sense of the how little the coalitions really matter. But so Lauren Legarda and Chisa Escudero, in 2007, were part of the anti-GMA administration coalition. It was called Genuine Opposition, and it was headed by Manny Villar and Jejomar Binay. So Villar-Binay coalition. That was where Lauren Legarda and Chisa Escudero was in 2007. In 2013, when they went to seek re-election, they were in Team Pinoy, both of them. So, Binay, Villar, Pinoy. Juan Miguel Zubiri and Dick Gordon also had a very similar trajectory. Both of them were pro-GMA in 2004 and 2007. In 2013, they were pro-Binay. And in 2016, they were pro-Grace Po. So, that's GMA, Binay, Grace Po for Zubiri and Gordon. Joel Villanueva in 2016 was Daang Matuwid, that's under Mar Rojas. And Rafi Tulfo has never run for Senate, or I don't think he's ever run for Senate. Binay as well. So this is kind of 7 people who are multiple slates, and I don't really know what to make of it. I don't know what this means. I've never seen anything like this before. I've never seen anyone in 3 different slates. And it's, I think, so strange how many of the major political candidates don't even have any senatorial slates. What was it like 6 years ago, the last presidential cycle? Do slates even really matter? Like, does it matter if you have a senatorial slate? Does it make you a more like a serious candidate for presidency if you have a good and very strong and robust senatorial slate? Based on 2016, the answer is no, because Rodrigo Duterte did not have a senatorial slate. In 2016, the 2 major, there was like administration versus anti-administration, as always. 2016, it was pro-administration, that's Pinoy's slate, which was under, I think, Mar Rojas at the time. And the anti-administration slate was Grace Po, Partido Galing ng Puso. So there's Daang Matuwid versus Partido Galing ng Puso in 2016. And then Una, under Binay, had a bunch of guest candidates, and they had like people like Manny Pacquiao. Other than that, Duterte himself in PDP Laban did not really have like a senatorial slate. And yet he became president still. He didn't have a very robust national party or mechanism or coalition behind him, and he won. So do you need senatorial slate to win? Clearly not, because Duterte bucked that trend. Does that mean Isko Moreno and Bongbong Marcos still have a chance to win despite not really having a strong senatorial slate? I would say yes. But looking at the senators again, it's very important because these people are the ones who are going to be making the laws for the country. And again, like I said, I think a fair thing to assume that is important for these people is that, if there's anyone in the country that needs to know the law, you would think it would be people who are making the laws. So I would like to hope that when you think of who to vote for Senate, you'd consider whether or not they have mastery of the law. I think that sounds like an important thing to have. And yeah, I think of all of the qualities, that's the most important one. And if they have been senators before, it's important to look at their record to see how they have been doing over the past several cycles, because many of them, again, like many of the people who are in like these several states, have been senators multiple times. And someone like Jejomar Binay, for example, he may have never been senator, but in 2019, his daughter became senator. She had no political experience, Nancy Binay. She ran for senator, she won as one of the 12. And if Binay becomes senator this time, and he seems like he will because he has such a strong, he has support from 3 major coalitions. He has his own UNA coalition. It'll be a father and daughter, tandem or team up of sorts in the Senate, which doesn't sound good in my opinion. To have family members like that in the same, only 24 people, only 24 representatives of the country. 2 of them are father and daughter. That doesn't sound right to me. Anyway, but that's how it is right now. I don't know how this will continue going. Perhaps Isko Moreno will end up having a, build up his senatorial slate. Maybe a lot of these, big names will not have as much of an impact because maybe there'll be a change in tune. Maybe the voters will decide that we've had enough of these people and want to support others who have different experience in the government. Like maybe the PTP Laban people are working in the current administration, but they don't have senatorial experience. Maybe people will want to support them. I don't know. Maybe Isko Moreno will have his own coalition. Maybe Bongbong Marcos will somehow find a coalition. But given all of this stuff, I think that it's important to really consider because, again, these are very, very important people who are voting into office, and they will affect how our actual laws are made that affect all Filipinos in the country for possibly the next several decades. So it's very important to look into all this stuff and to understand who is running so that you can know who to vote for. I hope that this was helpful for some people. Yeah.